All right, we welcome you back inside the crowded booth. My name is Bryce Koon, alongside longtime friend of the show, Palmer. Palmer, I just found this is Palmer Thombs, by the way. If you're listening in on audio, we appreciate you, Palmer. I just found the first DM I sent you 3 years ago to get you on the show. At that time, you were working with another company, and you had mentioned, I think you said, "I'm not the best option, but would love to hop on with you guys." And look at us now, 3 years later. You're a regular
No,
now, man. We appreciate you taking the
and
time out of your
nothing
busy
has
fall
changed.
camp schedule.
I'm still not the best option you could have, and you still continue to hit me up and say, "Hey, can I get you on to preview Georgia?" And I keep telling you, Bryce, there's so many better options out there besides me. Please don't
Yeah.
feel obligated to keep having me on. So no,
Well, look,
I do enjoy all these conversations, and I think we've got a good thing going, good friendship that we've built outside of just the on camera reporting.
and two, I mean, you've built such a great relationship with a lot of our Georgia Tech followers that they'd be remiss if we used another Georgia reporter on the show. But man, Palmer, fall camp's in full swing. You and I were just joking about before this, like we're tired. Like I don't know about you guys over there in Athens, but in Baton Rouge, it's been ridiculously hot. And we're kind of in this dog days of fall camp where and Brian Kelly used this. I know you're a big golf fan today, and I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this. It's starting to become moving day. Where guys really have to kind of say, hey, who are, on defense, who are the 15 guys, 16 guys that we're going to be able to really utilize in different packages when we get to week one. But kind of talk with us as we get ready. How's fall camp been? I know an interesting media session with Kirby Smart yesterday, but just overall, maybe we'll talk storylines and we'll start on the offensive side of the football. Maybe a couple key storylines or things that you've kind of picked up on may have caught your eye through the first couple weeks of fall camp.
Yeah, I might have to steal Brian's line there about it being moving day, because that's really what it feels like as Georgia goes into this second scrimmage this coming Saturday. Georgia, they scrimmaged the first time. We talked to Kirby on Tuesday after that scrimmage, after that Saturday scrimmage, and he wasn't super happy about things. He was saying, hey, our depth is a concern. We don't feel like that we have as many winning football players out there as we've had in years past. And he called it the deterioration of football. And he used that term several times. And, I don't necessarily agree with Kirby there. I do think that maybe that's a little bit of coach and trying to get a message across to his team and trying to, get some of those guys that maybe aren't playing winning football now, but are capable of playing winning football come mid-season, come, August 31st when they kick off. He's trying to use that as a motivational factor. And so, I don't necessarily see depth as a major concern, maybe as big as Kirby does. Now, obviously he gets to see this team on a daily basis versus we get to see him every couple of days for 15 minutes. But I look at this roster and, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball. I think running back would have been a position that I would have come into fall camp with some depth concerns, but it's been a big, big, big winner of fall camp. The stock in that room is certainly rising. You've got Branson Robinson back from an injury that he suffered, a ruptured patella tendon this time last year. He's back full go, no brace out there. He looks ready to roll. That's not something that I expected at this time. I was thinking that Georgia may not have him until midseason. Nate Frazier, a true freshman that wasn't an early enrollee. He arrived in May. Was somebody that I think you were looking at saying, hey, maybe he's going to have to carry the ball some here with Georgia, having Trevor Etienne at the top, having Roderick Robinson at the top, but maybe not having a Branson Robinson. You thought Nate Frazier might have to get some carries. He was the number 2 running back in the country coming out of high school in this past class. And man, he has been everything that he was advertised. And, now you look at that room and you say, hey, you've got 4 really good running backs that you feel confident in. Cash Jones is a guy, a 5th guy that Kirby has mentioned several times as a leader in that group. He's somebody that's been a veteran for that group. He's carried the ball. He's had to be a contributor in the past. And so you've got 5 guys there plus 2 freshmen. Georgia should feel really good about that depth in that running back room. And I don't think that that's something that I would have been saying coming into camp.
Yeah, you just Ralph's gonna be so excited to hear about Cash Jones. He loves some Cash Jones, and I believe he had a couple bets that Cash Jones helped hit on last season. So he'll love that one. But you talk about the running back room, Palmer, and I think that fans of Georgia and fans just across college football have become accustomed to the fact that the casual fan may not recognize the name in the room, but Georgia's going to have one or two backs that have really made a difference. And also want to kind of point out the fact that new voice in the room in terms of the coach there too, and Josh Crawford. So you know, how surprised are you? I know you went into it a little bit, but what was the level of concern, and really how surprised are you that it's kind of gone this well, this far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely surprised that we're seeing Branson back in the role that he is. I wouldn't say that I'm shocked by Nate Frazier, being a contributor for this running, or looking like he could be a contributor for this running back room. I'm probably a little surprised by how quickly that's come about. Because he wasn't an early enrollee. If he had been around Athens in March and April and had gone through those winter workouts and had been with this offense and learning the playbook and all that, I might not have been as shocked by that. But now I do think I'm a little surprised that he's done it this quickly. I think that there were a lot of reasons to be excited about this room with the addition of Florida transfer Trevor Etienne. Roderick Robinson was somebody that played so well that they pushed Andrew Paul. That he kind of pushed Andrew Paul out of the room as a post spring transfer from out of this running back room, and a player that Georgia was really excited about when they landed him. He too had a pretty serious injury his first year, and so that kind of derailed things for Andrew there. But I think that there were reasons to be excited. I on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the most surprised. I'd probably put it at right around 5, 6. I think that I looked at that and was maybe a little bit more concerned about it than maybe I should have been, knowing the kind of bodies that they had. But I do think that the biggest surprise has been Branson Robinson being back healthy. And very excited to see what he can do in a game. Very excited to see what Nate Frazier does. Everything that we heard coming out of this first scrimmage is that he was the MVP. We watched him in those practices. He looked legit. And so, it's been a little while since Georgia has had that just game changer at running back. Obviously that 2014 room that had Todd Gurley and Keith Marshall and Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, just a loaded room there. For a while there, it was just Georgia had those guys. Then they get Chubb and Michelle back, and they add in DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift takes over, and he and Elijah Holyfield both go for 1,000 yards. Since then, I mean, James Cook and Zamir White were good running backs. Kenny McIntosh was a really good, capable running back and did a lot of great things for them. Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards did their job, but I don't know that Georgia has had a game changer in the running back room since DeAndre Swift. They had it at times with James Cook. That Tennessee game in 2021, he was certainly a game changer. Made some game-changing plays. But the consistent game-changing ability of a running back, I don't know that they've had since 2019 when Swift was in that room. And, you look at Etienne, you look at the potential of Frazier, they might have multiple game changers in this running back room.
Well, and to your point, talking about maybe you weren't as sold on it heading into fall camp. I mean, that's kind of everybody's job in the media. I mean, you think that this room could be good, but until you see certain things and you start to hear some of the feedback from the coaching staff, that's when you can really start to formulate your opinion. Because, like you said, and like we kind of talked about, I mean, Georgia's it's never been for a lack of talent in that room, but it's more of the expectation. Can you meet the expectation? Which, like you mentioned, a couple of those names, man, that it's still crazy to think about that 2014 Georgia running back room, which has to be one of the best when you look at what they've been able to do at the college level, in those four names. But, Palmer, we go to the other side of the football where, and I don't know if you agree with this, but I think one of the the things that was a natural fall off for Georgia was kind of the play of the defensive line at times, and really because the previous 2 seasons in 22 and 21, you had all worldly talent there. There was going to be a natural kind of fall off. But when you look at this room heading in to kind of 2024, some of the faces, some of the names. Uh, has that been a group that's caught your eye throughout fall camp? And how important is it for them to maybe not live up to 21, 22, but just in general, be the best version of themselves?
Yeah, we talk about those Georgia running back rooms of the early 2000s, and that Georgia defensive line room is kind of in that same vein of how special that group was. That 2021 group that had 4 first-round picks on it in Trayvon Walker and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Devontae Wyatt. They had Carter back in 22 and had to replace a trio of guys, and Carter really helped that. You really saw what Jalen Carter meant to this defense more in 2023 than you did 2022, I feel like, because, not having him there, you were able to see, it's not like Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson and Zion Logue are not capable players. Logue is somebody that got picked in the NFL draft, but not having a game changer up front. And I'll use that term again. We use it with the running backs. We'll use it with the defensive linemen, maybe game wrecker is the better term to use here, but not having that guy up front, really showed for Georgia last year. And I'm not entirely sure that they have that this year. They went out into the transfer portal and they got Xavier McLeod from South Carolina. He's a guy that played in, a handful of games last year and redshirted in Columbia and ended up being away from that football program by mid-October. And so somebody that's not necessarily coming in as that dude in that run, in that defensive line room. I think that you do bring back Nazir Stackhouse. You do bring back Warren Brinson. You've got some younger guys that are really incredibly talented. Kristen Miller, Jordan Hall. You're looking at those guys as potential, guys that have got to step up. Now, that being said, Warren Brinson's been dealing with some injuries. Jordan Hall's been dealing with some injuries. Jordan Hall looks like he's probably going to miss the start of the season, based on everything that we've heard, as he's dealt with tibia fractures in both of his legs. And so, that to me, if the running back room is the group that has raised their floor the most, I think that the defensive line is the group that has maybe that I'm seeing. Not necessarily seeing the floor, but I'm more concerned about it now than I was then. And I think I already was concerned. It's a group that, again, they didn't add a difference maker in the transfer portal. They didn't, Deion Walker was somebody that Georgia fans had their eye on. Walter Nolan is somebody that Georgia fans had their eye on. They didn't go out and add that type of piece. And teams across the country tried to add that piece. Not many were capable of doing it because there's just not that many guys out there that A, are capable of doing that, and B, did enter the transfer portal. Now, Georgia was able to hold on to Kristen Miller, who flirted with the portal and had been rumored he may be headed out west to USC, and he's going to be in Athens, and he's going to be a big part of that defensive line group. Mykel Williams is somebody that is returning and, former 5-star All-American talent. Now, what is his role going to look like this year? That kind of remains to be seen. He's kind of splitting time between defensive end and outside linebacker because they do feel good about Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, who's coming back to full health, was not quite there last year. He's at that defensive end spot. They feel good about him. Gabe Harris is another person that they feel really good about on that edge. And so, what does it look like for Georgia? Really the front seven, but it all starts with that defensive line. Smile Munden is banged up at inside linebacker. Good news, they've got CJ Allen, they've got Raylan Wilson, they've got Jalen Walker. They feel really good about that inside linebacker group. What is the rotation going to look like at defensive end and outside linebacker with Chaz Chambliss, Damon Wilson, Mykel Williams, Gabe Harris, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, Joseph Jonah Ajanye, a 5-star freshman that they bring in. And then what's that interior defensive line group going to look like? To me, that is not necessarily the biggest concern. I would say I'm more concerned about the front seven. Concerned about the defensive line interested in what this front seven is going to look like.
Yeah. No, I like that. And, you mentioned with the portal. I mean, look, I cover a team down here. They didn't make a massive splash. I think the demand was high for especially interior defensive line talent, where the supply was a little bit lower than like a lot of people thought. I think that a lot of programs around the country had their eye on a couple pieces on other rosters that never officially entered the portal. But, Palmer, as we kind of wrap it up here, I never want to pigeonhole you into something that could get you in trouble with the Georgia fan base. But I am curious because this schedule is daunting. Regardless if it's the red and black G on the side of the helmet. I mean, this is a daunting schedule. So when you look at this, we don't have to go straight into a record prediction. If you have one, you can share it. But if I were to tell you Georgia wins the SEC, what is that if? What is something for you that says this has to happen for Georgia to navigate a pretty tough schedule and also emerge as the SEC champions, and obviously in that sense, obviously probably be that first round bye with the SEC champion in the playoff?
Man, that might be a tougher question to me than the record, because the record is the kind of the thing that I've thought about all offseason. 11-1 is where I land in that regular season record. Now, where does that loss come? I don't know, because you look at, and this is, you could probably pull up last year's recording or 2 years ago, the recordings that we had preseasons, and I probably was saying the same thing. You look at this schedule, especially this schedule as compared to previous years. You go on the road to Alabama, you go on the road to Texas, you go on the road to Ole Miss. You've got Clemson in week 1. You've got Tennessee later in the season in November. You've got a tough Auburn team that always plays Georgia well. Kentucky is not an easy place to play. Oh, by the way, you've got a rivalry game against Florida. Georgia Tech is a team that gave Georgia some trouble last year. That's not an easy schedule. And so to say that they're going to go undefeated against that schedule feels crazy. But when you look at Georgia compared to each of those teams, it feels very difficult to pick out where that loss is going to come, because Georgia is more talented. Georgia will be favored. If you were going to pin a loss on me, I think that it's at Texas. And that feels like that right spot. I don't think Georgia's going to lose to Alabama. I think that they're going to be really focused for that one. I don't see them losing to Ole Miss, especially in November. I think that's when you want to play a team like that. Transfer portal build up there, and maybe depth is a concern. Texas, Georgia, that's going to be a battle. And I think that Georgia's absolutely going to be focused for that one. But, going on the road there and playing a really talented group that they've got, it would not shock me if Georgia lost that game. So 11-1 is where I come to with a record. How does Georgia win the SEC? I think a lot of it falls on Carson Beck, and the fact that we're, 18 minutes into this thing and haven't mentioned Carson Beck, it feels kind of crazy. He could be a Heisman Trophy winner. This offense has really special capabilities here. And I'm really excited to see what they can do with Beck. And obviously they don't have a Brock Bowers this year, but they feel good about that tight end group still. Oscar Delp, Ben Urasic there. Like I mentioned earlier, they feel really good about that running back room. They feel really good about this receiver group, even though they did dismiss one before fall camp started, but they still feel like the top end with Dominic Lovett, Dylan Bell, Anthony Evans, Colby Young, Arian Smith. We're still mentioning Arian Smith. That 5, add in the 2 transfers that they added along with Young, in London Humphreys and Michael Jackson. They feel really good about the top end of that receiver room. And so, all those pieces, I think that Georgia wins the SEC if the offense can live up to expectations. And I would probably say the same about the defense. I do think that, to me, I would say if the offense can live up to expectations and the defense can have a difference maker emerge, that's how Georgia wins the SEC. I don't know who that is. It could be CJ Allen. It could be Smile Munden. It could be Michael Williams. It could be Malachi Starks. They need a difference maker to emerge on that defensive side of the ball, that every game you're looking at that scouting report and saying, hey, there's the dude. Because I think this offense has so many dudes, so many pieces, that it's going to be a different guy every game. I think you need somebody to emerge on that defensive side of the ball. So offense lives up to expectations. Defense has a difference maker emerge. 11-1 is okay, guys. 11-1 would get Georgia into an SEC championship game in all likelihood, and a potential rematch against Texas there. 11-1, even if you don't make the SEC championship game, you're probably in the playoffs. 2 losses might get you in the playoffs with this schedule. I mean, yeah. Georgia's going to need some signature wins, but they've got tons of opportunities for those. And so even if you drop 1, even if you drop 2, you're going to be fine if you're Georgia, because of that red and black G, because of the talent, because of Kirby Smart, because of everything that goes into it with this expanded playoff. So I like where Georgia's coming into this season. I like their chances to win the SEC. I picked them in my preseason poll from Media Days. I had Georgia and Texas in the SEC championship game. I had Georgia emerging there. And that is a very potential possible scenario in that 11-1 world.
Yeah, and obviously, like we mentioned when I posed the question, that would put Georgia, you have to think, an SEC champion, especially if it's Georgia with the schedule, and potentially having to beat Texas twice or an Ole Miss twice or Alabama twice as that number 1 overall seed. We will see how that shakes out and how that plans for the college football playoff. And Palmer, it's also fun too because we're recording this on Wednesday. It's going to come out later in the week, but tonight we're going to be live giving our conference title picks and predictions. So it'll be a lot of fun to see how that stacks up with what you said right there. But Palmer Thombs, DawgHQ of the On3 Sports Network. Palmer, we always appreciate you having on, man. And before we get out of here, let people know if you guys got a fall camp deal where they can get the latest Georgia news from a site that we were talking beforehand. I mean, you guys do it as good as anybody.
Well, I appreciate that, Bryce, and I tend to agree. You look at Rusty Mansell, Jake Rowe, myself, Jake Roos, Jeremy Johnson. I feel like we've got as good of a group as there is out there, and there's a lot of really good ones in this Georgia market. But yeah, come find us over at DawgHQ. We will have a couple of things, a couple of specials that you can check out before the season, before everything kicks into gear. High school football is getting started in the state of Georgia this week. College football getting started here before too long. It certainly is a really fun time. I know this is my favorite time of year, and I would bet that it is yours too, Bryce. So DawgHQ is the place to be. Palmer Thombs on Twitter. That's PalmerThombs.
Look at Palmer giving a little love to our listeners over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well, and a part of the Believe Network as well. We appreciate those folks over there. And man, Georgia football is going to be fun to watch here in 2024 with that big marquee matchup. Palmer, you just get another fantastic date. Get some Chick-fil-A inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I know we've joked about that so much, but Georgia-Clemson going to be a lot of fun, and we'll probably get you on to preview that game before they get set to kick off. Just a couple days away from continuing to get to our playoff predictions. So make sure you check that live video out there as well next Monday evening. Palmer Thombs, my name is Bryce Koon. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth.